In this video, I'm going to attempt to survive 400 days in hardcore Minecraft. And this time, we're making our epic return in the brand new Minecraft 1.17 update. I want to explore the land, use all the new items I can get my hands on, and even start an enormous new build with these 1.17 materials. Before we begin, only a small percentage of my viewers are subscribed to the channel. These videos take an incredibly long time to produce, so if you could, please remember to click that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell. It really does help me out a lot. With that out of the way, my friends, let the 400 days commence. We're back, baby. Day 300, we're picking up right where we left off, Castle Island. Straight away, I heard a noise I didn't recognize coming from the water. I dove in to check it out, and lo and behold, we have found our very first axolotl. I ran up to the castle where I crafted a bucket, and on our very first day in 1.17, we've got a brand new pet axolotl. Straight away, I want to get things packed up to move out into the 1.17 terrain, but I can't find a single spare shulker box. Shulker box? I barely knew her box. So I crafted up some rockets. Hey, look! They added a crafting recipe! Finally! With a full tank of gas, I was finally able to make my way to the end. After a quick pit stop at the XP farm, my elytra were fully repaired, ready to take me to a new end city. After a bit of struggle, I managed to find this small end city where I started collecting shulker shells. After making a new enemy and only 6 shulker shells, it was time to find a new city. Now this is more like it. Here we found a ship with an elytra, awesome diamond gear, a dragon's head, and plenty of shulker shells. I stayed in the end a while longer, gathering some more shells and even getting a new achievement. Day 304, I made it home safely. I then proceeded to pack up the survival essentials as we make the move into brand new 1.17 terrain. Now that I've got my shulker boxes packed up, I can finally load them into my ender chest for easy transport. I was ready to fly away, but I realized I left my beacon underground. When I went down to get it, I realized the ores are completely different now. I grabbed my fortune pick to check out the rates on iron and gold ores. And since I was in the area, I went to check the creeper farm to collect any final gunpowder before we make like a tree and get out of here. I needed to stock up on food in order to survive until day 400, so I made a quick pit stop at my villager trading hall in order to exchange some melons and pumpkins for some golden carrots. When I came back to the surface, I noticed something glowing underwater. I dove in to check it out, and my suspicion was confirmed. Ladies and gentlemen, the glow squid has been secured. Day 306, it's time to say goodbye to the castle. We probably won't be coming back here very often, at least not in this video. After a quick farewell, I went looking for 1.17 terrain, stopping to kill some horses along the way. After that workout, I flew into this cute little village. I stole all their apples, bought some bricks, barricaded a few people in their houses, and even buried one underground, like a cute little squirrel. I flew around the village and I found this beautiful spot. I knew I had to build something here eventually. So, on day 307, I started to set up camp. To mark out a new location, I scrounged up enough resources to make a little signpost to record this momentous day. This glowing sign was so dang cool, but purple made it even better. After I got my things in order, I wanted to try some 1.17 caving, so I went underground and quickly realized this terrain had already been generated. I'd have to venture even further to find new blocks, so I did exactly that. Hey, I still flicker in 1.17. Flicker? I barely knew. I happened upon this ravine which had a mineshaft supported by logs. This told me I was definitely in the right place. I dropped into the ravine where I found my very first copper ore. It was a beautiful, tender moment. I sailed majestically into the ravine, landing in this mineshaft. I turned around a corner and there I found my very first amethyst geode. I had to watch my back though, since it opened up into a big scary cave. I carried on lighting up the mineshaft around me so I won't be ambushed by any creepers, mined my first blocks of deep slate, and finally mined my way inside of the geode. Just behind the geode, there was a bit of mineshaft left. I lit it up and checked the minecart chest. Glowberries? Check. I spent the entirety of day 308 mining out this amethyst geode. I made sure to leave the budding blocks so they could regrow crystals over time. On day 309, I found 2 more axolotls, so I scooped those little guys up, grabbed some glow lichen, found a desert village, and a savanna village where I found another tall grass. My 1.17 scavenger hunt carried on in day 310, and this time I found goats. I'm going for the 1.17 achievements too, so you know I had to do it. I left the goats in peace as I wanted to search for another elusive 1.17 block, and the only way I know of getting it in this version is in sunken ships. Lucky for me, there was a shipwreck right here on the path back home, so I checked it out and found the elusive moss block. Before heading back home, I wanted to check out the 1.17 mining scene, so I dug a hole down to diamond level, set up a beacon, somehow got these achievements for the first time just now, and spent the next day mining. While caving on day 312, I came across a small patch of dripstone. I think this is one of the last things I had to find. After that, I spent a couple of days exploring these new caves, collecting all the copper I could hold. I came back to offload some resources into shulker boxes, and decided to do a bit more speed mining before heading back into the caves and finding this epic dripstone cavern. But before I could get to that, I got a little bit distracted by mining out a whole entire geode for 2 days. What a genius! Once I wrecked that geode, I made my way into the dripstone cave, where, you guessed it, I mined out all the dripstone. I hit the caves one last time and rounded up any final veins of copper I could find. And finally, I made my way back to the beacon. On day 318, I packed up my beacon and I flew up out of the mines. It felt good to be back home. What better way to celebrate my return than breaking up all these ores with Fortune 3? So I gathered up all of the ores I collected with Silk Touch, stacked them up sky high, and in a very satisfying manner, I chopped them all down with Fortune 3. On day 321, I smelted up some of my copper, and I've gotta say, we're off to a pretty good start. When I placed it down, it was even more beautiful than I imagined. Day 322, I wanted to put together a dripstone farm because I knew it'd take a long time to grow. So I built this small dripstone platform and waterlogged the top. Easy as that. I took the rest of my copper ingots and crafted them into blocks, expanding the collection quite nicely. Then I took 2 ingots and an amethyst shard to make it the first ever spyglass of this world. Gotta love that double zoom. I tried light blue dye on this sign, but it looks kinda icky. That kinda bummed me out, but to lift my spirits, I moved on to playing with moss. I placed 1 block down among the stone, and with 1 bone meal, it spread like crazy. It's incredible how easy this stuff is to farm, and there's so many opportunities from auto bone meal farms to easy mining. Easily one of the best additions in Minecraft. Thanks, Mojang. Still no dripstone. On day 323, I set out on a mission to find some bees, as I knew I'd need loads of honeycomb for my shiny new copper blocks. Luck wasn't on my side, so I tried instead to look for any loose bees flying above the tree line. Finally, I found one. After I found the nest, I placed a flower down so the bee would hopefully fly inside. Soon after that, I found another bee flying around. I bred them so I could bring home a full nest and get the achievement. Night fell sooner than I expected, but I wasn't about to take any chances with mobs, so I blocked us all in and patiently waited for the last bee to enter the nest. Back home, I started to smelt the gold I'd mined earlier, condensed some more copper into block form, and made a tiny honeycomb farm by Ilmango. I'd been smelting so much stuff that I actually had to come down to this cave on day 325 and mine nothing but coal. I'm gonna have to come up with a fix for that pretty soon. Day 326, I built an AFK spot on top of the dripstone farm where I stood until day 329. I can't believe you guys let me AFK here for 4 whole days without telling me I need to place the dripstone underneath. But hey, at least the bees were productive. This is a little bit embarrassing. I didn't know how dripstone worked. Luckily, Dripstone Guru Cub Fan made a lesson.
And then we'll have pointed dripstone underneath.
Thanks, doggy. After becoming a certified dripstone expert, I fixed the farm. Next, I moved on to expanding the bee operation in order to start breeding the bees. Shortly after improving their little house, the bees came out to see it, so I was able to start the breeding process. We're gonna need a lot of bees. With only a bit of sunlight remaining, I took some time to build this frame for glowberry farming. I bred my bees pretty frequently throughout day 331. I knew eventually I would want some huge crop fields to decorate this land. I don't really need the food, I just really love how they look. So I flattened out this spot and started to grow some crops. Shortly after, I came back to find that my dripstone has grown! I have some ideas on how I can use this in the next video. On day 332, I wanted to conduct a little bit of a science experiment. So I gathered up all of my copper blocks and laid them out in this grid pattern to see if I could get them to oxidize. Day 333, breed bees. I hadn't seen the copper grid in all its glory yet, so I flew over. It looks so cool. It hadn't even been a full Minecraft day and some of those blocks had already weathered. Amazing. I spent the next couple of days organizing my items and AFKing to let the copper age. Day 336 was mostly spent farming dripstone, watching the copper oxidize, and farming some other random items I'll probably never use. Day 337, I wanted to get this place connected to the nether, so I built a nether portal just before harvesting some crops. I took those crops and composted them because I did not know at the time moss blocks give you way more bone meal. I then used the bone meal to grow some fancy new azalea trees. Prepare yourselves for immaculate leaf crunching. Just listen to those leaves. What a divine sound. I spent the rest of the day farming azaleas, mostly just so I can hear that satisfying leaf breaking sound. Guys, I need sand. So on day 338 I flew over to the desert. But first I had to stop and kill some fish because I remember a certain couple of cool cats lingering around this village. Once I got my cats, I wandered the desert for 40 seconds and found this to be the best place to collect sand, because there's sand here. So for the next few days I did exactly that. I got to relax with my favorite music while digging up sand for a future project, which you'll see a part of in this video. I returned on day 344 and bred my cats to get this little cutie. His name is Furnace. I used up some of my sand to make TNT because we're gonna do some blasting in the nether today. But when I came through, the portal was in the wrong spot. So I broke the portal and rebuilt it in the right place. I messed up! I divided my coordinates by 4, not 8. While I was way out in the middle of nowhere though, I decided to make the most of things by mining for some copper. I even found another geode. After that distraction, I came back through to the nether and relocated the portal one last time and made sure it was actually in the right spot. Of course, when I got back home, I had to break down my ores in satisfying fashion. Once I was through, I realized I had bought some small drip leaf from a wandering trader a while ago. So I tried placing it down on some moss and sure enough, we've got infinite big leaf boys. Then I built an airlock on my bee enclosure, just in time for another round of breeding. I'd like to think you guys have come to know me pretty well over the past few months. One thing you may have picked up is that I'm very indecisive. I changed my mind on the copper and I wanted it all shiny and new, so I spent the afternoon picking up all these blocks and stripping all of the oxidation away. Finally, on day 349, I was prepared to go blasting for ancient debris. I returned home on the 350th night, but as I climbed into bed weary from my travels, I was ambushed. A Zoglin made its way through my portal. I've never fought one of these things before, but they are tough. I had to take it out before it killed my poor cat. On day 351, I expanded my storage mainly just so I could put my nether stuff away. Then I came over to heal my poor cat, but accidentally overfed him, so much so that he made a whole extra cat. Welcome to the world, beef. After that, I harvested a bit of dripstone and expanded the farm. Day 352, I was finally ready to take all 21 of my netherite scraps and convert them into ingots. So I grabbed some gold and combined the two components to make 5 ingots. That let me upgrade my sword, shovel, pickaxe, and lastly, my hoe. After all those epic upgrades, I finished the day by breeding my bees. By day 353, I was really in the mood for some building. So I gathered up some materials, scouted out a location, and got straight down to business. There's truly no better way to mark a full Minecraft year than starting on a brand new castle. Here on day 365, I ran out of copper for the roof, as you can see. So I put away my building materials, and by night I was flying around in search of copper. On day 366, I came across this insane ravine with mine shafts like a crossword puzzle. I knew I'd find everything I was looking for right here, so I did exactly that. Straight away, I found plenty of copper, lots of good loot, and even found a place to build a string farm if we ever need one. Day 367, I followed a cave down to deep slate level and mined out all the ores I could. Day 368, I found another cave spider spawner, more copper, and even more copper, before heading up to the surface and resting for the night at a local village. Day 369, I found myself in yet another ravine, but I'll spare you the details. I mined copper. Day 370, I made my way back home and got a good look at the castle. Then I had the great honor of harvesting all this beautiful dripstone. Isn't this stuff awesome? After all that excitement, I prepared plenty of flowers to breed all the bees I'll ever need. Sweet! Day 371 started by breaking down yet another pillar of copper ore and smelting it all down so that I could finish up the castle roof. While that copper smelted, I tried using my time wisely for once and gathered some azalea leaves during the wait. By day 372, I had apparently had enough of these stupid dumb glowberries, so I tore down the little farm I propped up a while back. My copper was still smelting, but there was a lot of it hot and ready like Little Caesars, so I took what I could and crafted it all into blocks. I had the copper, but I still needed honeycomb to wax it. So I entered the bee sanctuary with a handful of hives and filled them all up with cute little bees. Finally, I had all the bees in their nests. Next, it was time to build a honeycomb farm. So I spent all of day 374 building the farm wrong, but I finally came through and built it properly the next day. I ran hopper lines on day 376, and this farm was already producing a honeycomb really quickly. Good job! With the honeycomb farm completed, it was time to expand the castle one more time. My oh my, this castle is coming out beautifully. I love how well the copper balances with the calcite palette. A wandering trader brought me gifts, but I didn't like anything he brought, so instead I gave him the gift of dying quickly. I've never really used armor stands, so I decided now was as good a time as any. I set up 2 guardian armor stands in front of my house to ward off any bad guys that would come my way. Back at the storage area, I decided to whip up a few candles since I've got my fancy new honeycomb farm. With some magenta dye, I made my first colored candles. They're so pretty! Inside the castle, I cleared out all my building supplies to make room for the interior design, which we'll take on later. I came back to the storage area one more time to grab some azalea leaves and some dirt, because I want to spend the night building up the terrain around my castle. I've never really done anything more than minimal terraforming, so I thought this would be a good challenge for me. The mobs came to be just too frustrating to work around though, so I slept through the night and kept working on the terrain over the next few days. I'm not entirely sure why, but taking on a terraforming job this large was really terrifying for me. As I said before, I've never really done anything quite to this scale, only flattening out some spaces for builds and smoothing them out, never building up terrain like this. I found it incredibly motivating once I got going, and I really got into the rhythm. As with most things, if you quit talking about how hard a job is and you just try your hardest, you'll probably surprise yourself with how well you do. Okay, now that I'm done throwing shade at myself, I need to collect some honeycomb from this farm, which is performing quite nicely if I say so myself. We need all of this to wax the copper roof because I don't want my castle to look like a giant tube of Aquafresh. My goodness, this sound is disgusting. I tried to make a path using these azalea bushes, but I didn't really like where it was going. So instead, I started on a flower field with azalea leaves and lilacs instead. Me being the indecisive boy I am, I spent the next couple days working and reworking this field. With that field complete, the castle feels so much more natural in this area. Even though it took a lot longer than expected, I'm really glad I spent the time to make that field exactly how I wanted it. This wall felt a little bare, so I went ahead and added a small window to break up the flat surface a little bit. And we are looking good! On day 389, I wanted to make some end crystals, but I needed blocks, not panes, so that was a waste. Anyway, I need other ingredients. Blaze powder for the Eyes of Ender, and I'll need way more gas tears than this. I even came all the way back to the old castle to find more components, but still I could only craft 3 crystals. So I spent some time in the nether hunting down ghasts and using my sword to get the looting 3 effect. Then to get more Eyes of Ender, I had to go all the way back to the nether fortress and use the blaze spawner. By the time I was through, I got up to 14 end crystals, which was perfect. When I got back to the overworld, I got probably the greatest achievement ever. Day 391, I found myself back in the end dimension. At this point, some of you are catching on. I came back to resummon the dragon not once, not twice, but 3 times. I want to start opening these gateways for a huge project further down the road. I've never done this in any survival world ever, so this is pretty awesome to experience firsthand. Now I'm going to spare you the theatrics because we've seen me fight enough dragons in these videos, but wow, this fight is incredibly easy with an elytra. And just like that, down went the first dragon, and the second, and the third. Ender Dragon, I barely knew her dragon. Oops! I forgot to set my spawn at home. I made it home through the nether safe and sound, and after all that brutal dragon slaying, I wanted to relax a bit. I had seen someone breed axolotls using live fish in buckets, so I flew over to the ocean and grabbed myself some salmon. But before I could get to that, I spent all of day 392 admiring the lilac garden and sorting through the items I've collected throughout these 400 days. On day 393, I spent some time adding more texture to the new tower I've added onto the castle to help it blend together a bit more. Much better. I tweaked the lilac field once again on day 394 because apparently I just can't help myself. Next, I used some bone meal to liven up the landscape, getting rid of tall grass and flowers to keep it somewhat uniform. I started day 396 by smelting up some smooth stone because I want to use this to create a small patio attached to the lilac garden. Next, I moved on to the interior of the castle. As far as the flow of the build, I'm seriously in love with how this is turning out. I tend to stop building before things get this far, so I'm proud of myself for sticking through it. Day 398 came along, and I still haven't played with my axolotl friends. To make this right, I went ahead and dug a little temporary trench by the castle for these little guys to swim around in. So I tried to breed my axolotls, and it did not work. I just dumped the poor salmon in there, and they killed it. So I googled it, and apparently it needs to be a tropical fish. I didn't have time to go find any, so I picked up my tiny friends, filled in the pond, and decided to build something else here instead. So I spent the remainder of these 400 days building a nice little wheat field right next to the castle to provide a bit of balance and color to the build so far. On day 400, I crafted a fresh map to commemorate our brand new 1.17 calcite castle. Though we've accomplished a lot here, this is merely the beginning. I really hope you guys had as much fun watching this video as I had making it. If you did enjoy the video, I need you to go down and click that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. For those of you who have heard and who follow me on Twitter, you'll know that Imperial SMP is going to be starting soon, and we've got a ton of incredible YouTubers in the roster. You will not want to miss this, guys. Make sure you follow my Twitter and Twitch accounts. I'll have those linked down below. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I love you to death, and I'll see you in the next video.